Models of relationship between individual and society. Relation between individual and society are very close. Rawls' three models of the relation between the individual and society. Utilitarianism. The first model is Rawls's presentation of the position of classical utilitarianism, his most telling argument against. The utilitarian position is that it conflates the system of desires of all individuals and arrives at the good for a society by treating it as one large individual choice. It is a summing up over the field of individual desires. Utilitarianism has often been described as individualistic, but Rawls argues convincingly that the classical utilitarian position does not take seriously the plurality and distinctness of individuals. It applies to society the principle of choice for one man. Rawls also observes that the notion of the ideal observer, or the impartial sympathetic spectator, is closely bound up with this classical utilitarian position. Classical utilitarianism is the view that one ought always to promote the sum total of happiness over suffering. It is only from the perspective of some such hypothetical sympathetic ideal person that the various individual interests can be summed over an entire society. The paradigm presented here, and rejected by Rawls, is one in which the interests of society are considered as the interests of one person. Plurality is ignored, and the desires of individuals are conflated. The tension between individual and society is resolved by subordinating the individual to the social sum. The social order is conceived as a unity. The principles of individual choice, derived from the experience of the self as a unity, are applied to society as a whole. Rawls rightly rejects this position as being unable to account for justice, except perhaps by some administrative decision that it is desirable for the whole to give individuals some minimum level of liberty and happiness. But individual persons do not enter into the theoretical position. They are merely sources or directions from which desires are drawn. Justice as fairness. The second paradigm is that which characterizes the original position. It has already been suggested that this is a picture of an aggregate of individuals mutually disinterested and conceived primarily as will. They have their own life plans. They coexist on the same geographical territory, and they have roughly similar needs and interests, so that mutually advantageous cooperation among them is possible. This aspect of the circumstances of justice can be emphasized by assuming that the parties take no interest in one another's interest. Thus, one can say, in brief, that the circumstances of justice obtain whenever mutually disinterested persons put forward conflicting claims to the division of social advantages under conditions of moderate scarcity. The idea of a social union. The third paradigm is included under Rawls's discussion of the congruence of justice and goodness and of the problem of stability. It is described as a good, as an end in itself, which is a shared end. This paradigm is distinct both from the conflated application to the entire society of the principle of choice for one person and from the conception of society as an aggregate of mutually disinterested individuals. The idea of a social union is described in contrast to the idea of a private society. A private society is essentially the second model as realized in the actual world. It stems from a consideration of the conditions of the original position as descriptive of a social order over against this notion of private society. Rawls proposes his idea of a social union. It is one in which final ends are shared and communal institutes are valued. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.